Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Heavens, and welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of B2B marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the rollercoaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations, because sometimes I have no filter. So if you're a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. So today I have with me the very awesome Irina. Irina, would you like to give a very quick introduction?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Lucy, for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Irina, and until very recently, I was the Chief Marketing Officer at Volt, which is an open banking payments provider. I've spent the last 20 years on the intersection of tech, financial services, fintech, across both B2B and B2C in Europe and in Asia. I lived in Singapore for about eight years until 3 years ago, moved to the UK. So I love comparing those two parts of the world. And I also do really like comparing how B2B and B2C, how do they compare? What are the lessons that we can take from those examples? So I personally was part of quite a few payments companies. Visa was one of them, but I was also part of Grab, Southeast Asian super app, as well as Tunes, Rapid, and then most recently Volt. Yeah, so that's me.
Great, thank you very much. So the title of this podcast is Growing Pains and Marketing Gains. And we chose this title because I remember you wrote this absolutely fantastic post on LinkedIn that really caught my attention, Irina. And I've actually written down one of the bits that you said on there. And you said, scaling a company isn't just about chasing growth and unicorn status at any cost. You need to know what to optimize for at each stage. Too often, leaders optimize for the wrong metrics at the wrong time. Really, really awesome post it was. So I immediately reached out to you, I remember, and said, can we chat about this? And the reason for that is because I hear this so often from other marketing leaders, where there's this kind of misalignment, I suppose, between the expectations from the kind of the founding team or the business versus what the CMO thinks needs to happen, from a strategic marketing point of view at each of those stages. So this is something I'd really love to kind of dig into to see to unpack and see what you think about it. So scaling a business sounds really exciting. It's that kind of buzzy word at the moment, isn't it? Where everybody sort of says that, it's all about growth marketing and and being a kind of revenue focused. But what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about scaling a business?
So in that post that you're referring to, and thank you, Lucy, I really, really do appreciate that you found some value in it. In that post that I found, I was going through a course by the course called Revenue Architecture by Winning by Design. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Winning by Design, but it's a solutions agency, I guess, a strategic agency that helps B2B companies, actually it looks like probably B2C companies as well, to define the systems driving scalable growth and really reaching success. So from how do you grow a company from, 1 million in ARR to 100 million in ARR and to 1 billion in hopefully in ARR at some stage. And basically the post was making a reference to each stage of the company's life cycle being focused on a slightly different sets of KPIs and targets and metrics. But more than that, also the companies would be expecting to invest in very different sets of capabilities at the different stages. So imagine you're a small startup. You would be looking at the acquisition. You are looking for repeatable patterns. You are probably not investing very much in brand. As you grow and you scale a little bit further, that's when you are looking looking to grow your customer success function, for instance, then you would be looking into lifetime value and the efficiency metrics. And then onwards, you are maturing your processes. You're making sure that, again, like customer success, all of the processes are defined. And every stage, growth may look like actually a very different set of metrics. So I guess that taught me, and all of my past, when I looked back into my past experiences, what it taught me as well is that growth is such a often like abused word, really, but it means so many different things, and building a strong foundation matters a lot more often than just speed of the, the 70% or 100% year-over-year growth. So you need to make sure that you also balance your systems with the right capabilities, the right tools, the right people, even the org design has to follow, I guess, the aspiration of the company and the stage that it's in. So it also, and I think another way to look at growth, and something that I was thinking about lately, is that growth can also be at least three-dimensional. Perhaps there's more areas and more ways. So as you're looking at growth, you're looking at increasing the product depth, right? So not just growing the numbers. I guess you increase and add additional capabilities. You started with one trick, and then you started adding additional value-added services. So how do you grow the penetration? The second part is, and the second definition, the second dimension of growth is expansion, adding more markets, increasing your footprint, making sure that you offer your capabilities in more countries and in new territories, going beyond UK, going to Europe, then out of Europe. Where do you go? Kind of that's another definition of growth. So, and this is perhaps the how, not the what, but like these are all of the different areas that you want to be spending time on. And the KPIs and numbers and metrics that you would be tracking in this case would be very different. The third type and the third dimension of growth that I'm usually also kind of throwing in there is also growth through unlocking new target segments. So if you started with one vertical and you've had some success in it, how do you go broader? How do you expand out of one or two segments or industries into 3 or 5? And what's the right way to do that? But also beyond just the industry itself, the segments. Do you go from enterprise into mid-market into SME? So those are all of the different sort of facets and layers that you can bring in. And each one of them also has its own ways and its own nuances and its own KPIs and metrics that you should be looking at. So I guess these are not the misconceptions, but the misconception there is that growth is not a single dimensional panacea. So it's something that is much more complicated than that, and we have to be mindful of that.
That's really, really interesting. And do you think, I'm thinking back to the kind of the post that you had, which was splitting down the kind of growth strategies according to the different types of funding stages that you were at. Do you think that there's an alignment between, or a connection, I suppose, between those different growth dimensions that you mentioned and then the different stages of funding that the company is at?
There is so I think the metrics that I've shared there and the graph that I've shared sort of provides a really good framework that a lot of the companies can follow. And I love frameworks. Again, don't get me wrong. I really like to find and to leverage and to basically, instead of reinventing the wheel, tap into some of the smartest people's knowledge and try to look for a quick recipe for success. And I think that's why the post has generated so much positive reaction. But I think there is also quite a while, obviously, startup growth is a very nuanced field, and I think unfortunately we can't all follow the same principle. So while it provides a really helpful guidance that I wish a lot more entrepreneurs were actually able to tap into, I think the market dynamics and things that we're following now in the current also economic environment, they all create additional environment that influences this growth. So, but yes, being mindful of the things to optimize for, I think is always a helpful idea. Being mindful of what the investors are looking for, what the VCs would be looking for, what the external market should be a little bit more focused on. I think that awareness creates opportunities, in fact, not just for CMOs, but also for the senior leaders at every startup really that exists in pretty much any industry. It's not just fintech specific, it's actually any business.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the reason I asked that question is because I was thinking that with all of those kind of growth levers or the growth dimensions that you mentioned, often, and I don't know whether you've been in this situation. I know I have definitely, and I've heard from other marketing leaders, but you go into a business and suddenly you're presented with all of these growth options all at once. And I think it does kind of happen. It tends to happen a lot more sort of in startup world, where they're kind of very excited and trying to kind of grow a little bit almost like too quickly. So instead of really sort of looking to double down on a particular area, it's, well, let's kind of go to this country and this country, or into this market or this market, and without really looking to optimize on kind of what you've got at the moment. You haven't sort of maximized what you've got at the moment, if that makes sense. So I think the question I suppose in the back of my mind then is, with marketing are kind of always pulled in kind of lots and lots of different areas, right? Or given lots of different ideas. Like, how can marketing leaders push back and kind of say, okay, this is what I think we really need to focus on?
So I think it's a great question, and I wish there was like a single simple answer to that. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, actually, I think that the best marketing leaders, or actually business leaders, have to be adaptable and have to be simultaneously operating at different levels. So at the macro level, as part of the executive leadership team, you as a CMO are responsible for understanding what the company and the executive team, what are they focusing on. And if it's, I don't know, for instance, the stage of the company is efficiency, like focused on efficiency, you should all together be focused on a specific set of metrics. However, at the meso layer, I guess between the macro and micro, there has to be a medium layer. So what you as a marketing leader, besides all of those things, you need to know. So what needs to be done, and you are working with your marketing leadership team, working with them on the direction, on making sure that they understand what they're working on this week, this month, this quarter, this year, like in this specific cycle. So they may not necessarily be working on like the identical set of KPIs as much as potentially, optimization is going to be maybe the focus. They would be implementing new processes. They could be implementing, programs and campaigns, or I don't know, kind of their set of KPIs and targets could be at the medium level, at the meso level, a little bit different from that strategic view. At the same time, you as a marketing leader at the micro level would have to make sure that you maintain some capacity for the ad hoc and the small, very, very operational things. So looking into the opportunities, looking into data, sometimes picking up a cool idea about like small level execution. So basically, as much as possible, coming back to the answer to you, I think we have to operate at whatever, 30,000 feet, 3,000 feet and 3 feet, or maybe even 3 inches in some stages, making sure that we zoom in and zoom out so selectively. But the executive team ultimately needs to be updated. What do we need to make sure it's continuing to provide the relevant update and insights to our peers, while simultaneously also working on everything that must be done inside our own operational systems.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I spoke to somebody else on a previous podcast kind of about this, and yeah, you put it much more kind of eloquently than I did back then, but it was something on the lines of, it's the kind of shit they care about and shit we care about. But it's that old saying back again.
But it's not one or the other. I think it has to be one and the other. Plus, also, there is an element that I think is a little like it probably doesn't fit into any other textbook, and that's the element of somehow maintaining a little bit of capacity for playing, for the ideas, for like just that spark that sometimes could be coming from anywhere. It doesn't, like, it may be coming from the most junior person in the organization. I've had the most fun talking to the SDRs, by the way, and they usually come up with brilliant ideas. And sometimes we can, spin a few things. But so maintaining a little bit of, whether it's 5%, 10% of your time or mental capacity, really, to take those small opportunistic ideas, suggestions, and sometimes executing them, even if they don't necessarily fit into the big picture. I think that's what makes, actually, I'm hoping that's what makes it more fun, but also that's where the growth sometimes is coming from.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I hear this. This is something I think that's consistent throughout all the stages of growth or whatever size company you are. I always hear people kind of saying, I think best practice, I suppose. I hate that word, but like best practice, keep that sort of like 5 or 10%, like you mentioned, for experiments or whatever it is that you want to do. I really like that. I think. I mean, oh, where was I going with that? I think it does. I don't want to kind of put words in your mouth, but sometimes when you are kind of working for startups and scale ups, even just that 10% is kind of quite difficult because you normally are working at 150% most of the time. But what for you is kind of difference between what works kind of, or what have you seen in your experience is works for a startup versus kind of what works for a scale up, or what doesn't work? What would you kind of like, what would you change, what would you see as the difference between going from that kind of startup marketing mentality into the scale up?
Well, broadly speaking, and maybe I'm overly sort of generalizing, and I guess broadly speaking, the earlier stage startups are much more chaotic, right? So there's lack of processes. Everyone's doing everything they can really, and there is a lot more gaps in the scopes than there are people that are able to kind of fill those gaps. So that lack of process, you can afford having more lack of that process, lack of data, lack of I don't know, systems. So a lot of things are just floating in Slack. There is like one-on-one requests and DMs. But also that's where startups are usually hiring, and it probably makes more sense to hire generalists that can do a lot of different things. They may not do it, to perfection, but good enough execution is okay. So, and I'm sure and you've seen all of that also multiple times. When you're a scale up, that's when typically you go into much more specialized units, departments, functions. You hire people that are excellent at what they do. Ideally, you hire, the P-shaped or whatever the pie-shaped marketeers. They can do multiple things, but they do know their stuff, and they've probably built much more complex systems, and now they're trying to recreate them. There's a lot more clarity on scopes. There's a lot of clarity on the roles and responsibilities, who does what in what order, what is the sequence, but also how do we set objectives, how do we measure results. There's a lot more of that sort of, I guess we can call it professionalization of the marketing functions. And what starts to matter in these types of, at that stage, at the scale ups, is context on coordination, just making sure that everyone understands what the rest of their peers are doing, and then coordinating their actions, communicating with each other. So interestingly, soft skills become much more valuable at the scale up stage, and at early stage can survive on just, I don't know, hustle and fun and some pizzas and beers, really.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good, actually. Yeah, I get asked this quite a lot, actually. Like when people are going to kind of like a scale up phase of the business, it's like, who should be my first hire? And you've hit the nail on the head there. Like, actually, my answer is, well, I'd look to the strategy first, because you want those people that are less generalist and a little bit more specialized. But then who you hire depends on what your go-to-market plan is, right? Like if, for example, the strategy is leaning heavily into brand or into I don't know, like running events and everything like that, you need somebody with a background in kind of building communities and running events, rather than having somebody that was I don't know, a different type of marketer. Yeah.
I remember in my one of my roles when I was head of marketing, but also a solo head of marketing for the region at Rapid, I was actually doing pretty much everything. In my first few days, I wrote my own first press release, like literally first thing in my life that I had to do that. But actually, again, like it probably wasn't brilliant, but like it's just one of those examples. And then I started looking into all of the different channels. But I think it was actually really fun when you're every day doesn't look the same, really, and you're just continuing to build new muscles. But yes, I'll gradually you end up finding actually amazing people to do each one of those aspects and do it better than you.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So you've got to the point then where the company is sort of starting to scale, and you're putting together that team full of kind of specialist marketers, and you're really sort of finding your groove and getting that marketing engine going. But then the CEO walks through the door and says to you, right, okay, today's the day. That's it. From now on, we're going big. We're going global. We need to, times everything by 100. But you're still maybe just in the kind of the testing phase, or you feel that you're just in that kind of testing phase and starting to kind of grow the team, and you really haven't sort of proven that marketing engine is working in like one particular area or channel or whatever. Like, how do you handle that conversation? Have you been in that situation before?
So honestly, I think, Lucy, both of us, and I'm sure a lot of other people that would be listening to this would be much more familiar with the situation when the CEO and CFO comes and they say that we want to reduce the marketing spend. So it's a good problem to have when the CEO comes and wants to go big, which did happen to me also a couple of times as well. How do we handle that conversation? It's indeed a kind of a great opportunity for you to kind of to apply all of the skills and everything. But I do want to raise a question here of the company has to be ready. A question of the question that I would like to raise here is a question of integrity, really. Is the company ready? Is the product absolutely amazing? Do you believe in what you are about to be saying to the world? Do you have that, or are you kind of faking until you make it? So faking it until you make it. So that is where, in some cases I've seen, and unfortunately we've seen in the more recent news as well, when companies are promising something and going really big and fundraising and going into the tech crunches and investing in big campaigns. And then there is a huge disappointment, or like, I don't know, a scam that sort of surfaces up, and the whole bubble really just pops. So I think for me, this would be the first question. Would I, as a CMO, be ready to invest that money? Can I stand by the product and the promise? Can we deliver on that promise? Because I really don't think that like amplifying anything is worth amplifying. Whether it's, like, let's take, I don't know, if someone wants to go and run an ad, a Super Bowl ad, which is crazy expensive, as we all know, but the product is not able to really capture that demand, I would not be comfortable. I would be the first person to say, no, we should pause, we should take it a little bit slower. So I think you have to believe in what you're saying. The product has to be ready and good. Your compliance has to be rock solid. There is no shortcuts in advertising something that could be potentially false, or could be triggering any licensing or other issues. So I think I would be spending time with all of the other stakeholders to be picking their opinions and making sure that risk is addressed and is surfaced. And then once I get all of that clarity, I think the right way and the only correct way to do that is to go back, look into all of your past learnings, campaigns, experiments, all of those ideas that actually played out really, really well. And before you go and invest $500,000 in, say, things such as Money 2020, every fintech marketeer's favorite show, you basically need to know how to make it work for you. You have to go through that experience at least once at a smaller scale in order to be able to put the money, to invest the money. Because like, if you just come, I don't know, whatever, like, and you spend your money on the ad, whether it's Super Bowl, Money 2020, or any other big show, Web Summit, whatever, it doesn't matter. You have to, other teams have to be briefed. You have to get all the right tools and instruments. Your system, your lead generation, engines have to be working really well. If the emails, I don't know, if the contact forms don't fall on the right desk, and the CRM platform isn't really tested properly, if you're not tracking those results, it's a waste of time. In my past role, in one of my past roles at Visa, I remember one of the hardest thing about that, the kind of the old school, the old way, the corporate way of running marketing, is when you're spending 6 months working on a campaign, you do really expensive production. I don't know, you film somewhere overseas with a brilliant, beautiful, whatever, like setting. You spend $200,000 on just producing the video. Then you put all of those, tools into testing it, and then you put everything on there, you get all of the approvals, and by consensus you lose a little bit of the spark potentially, and then you put it on there and you can't do anything. And I think this is probably, I'm hoping that the world is now changing. This is perhaps the highest wastage that we can get, because from my perspective, my favorite and the most fun part of the experience is once you press that button and it goes live, what happens in the next 24 hours? What happens in the next 48 hours? How do you adjust? How do you tweak? What do you change? How do you what do you learn? What do you see? What's the response? So making sure that once you go big, going big is just the beginning, really. You have to make sure that you continuously monitor, improve, enhance, and then amplify the best bits, the ones that actually stick with your consumers the strongest, that generate the highest response and the biggest and the best reaction, really. So I think I know it's probably less scientific way to answer your question, but yeah, I think that's how I would do it.
No, that's perfect. My goodness, I've got so many thoughts and comments, but one of them I just wanted to make. You've really hit one of the areas at the moment that I seem to be kind of getting on my soapbox about, which is the sort of the distribution side of it. I think it's this myth that a lot of people have around let's produce this absolutely amazing video, let's put a load of money and resource into it, but then we're just going to hit play on that video and then suddenly we're going to expect a load of kind of inbound inquiries from it, and that's not kind of how it works. Actually, there is a lot of work that needs to go into that around the distribution of that video. It isn't just a case of play and hoping that magic will happen. But I think it was a really good answer. Actually, you started to answer almost like the other way around as well, which I'd love to kind of dig into, which, like you said, is normally more often the case, where it's the CEO is saying that they do want to go big with marketing, but then actually you don't have the kind of the resource or the budget or whatever to sort of back that up. So how would you handle that conversation?
I think we tend to, and in retrospect, I'm guilty of the same. We tend to fall in love with our project so much that sometimes we feel extremely sad and disappointed with that conversation when we react emotionally. And I do, in a way, I do regret potentially also reacting that way. But if I analyze and if I take just an honest step, I can look into the actual kind of, again, like in the context of the business decision. I think we can all understand why it's happening and we can adjust, really. So look, I think there is a ton of virtually free tools and channels that we can activate. And I don't know, one example, LinkedIn is such a brilliant channel. I love it. I have been investing a lot of my personal time, but also professionally. I spend a lot of time building reputation for the brands that I'm in charge of on LinkedIn. And I think it still continues to amaze me how much potential it has and how much I haven't really even I've barely scratched the surface of how to activate it. So whether it's with budget or without budget, even PR can be done or with minimum resources or zero cost, really. You can do, again, I was telling you an example about how I wrote my own press release and then I sent it out from my personal email or like my corporate email, but without necessarily leveraging an agency or getting into any of those kind of buying any of the access of to the libraries of the databases of the journalists. You can get in touch with journalists directly. You can pretty much do, I think the only thing you can't do is performance marketing, but the vast majority of the other things, including SEO, including email campaigns, you can do with virtually with limited resources. You may need a little bit of money and budget to access the tools, because there are some brilliant tools out there that can help you to become much more productive. And obviously automation can never be replaced by human beings. But broadly speaking, if I had to, I think that could be a kind of another example of a creative exercise, a creative challenge that you could solve. So yeah, it can be done.
Love that.
In fact, I think this is where creativity is born, really, when you're like in very limited space, when you have to operate with limited resources. Obviously, I think what we are losing in here, I'm just sort of thinking as I speak, really, I think what you might be losing here is amplification sometimes, especially if you do something really, really cool. And that amplification that can be brought in with a little bit of the extra investment. I think that's probably what like the trade-off. So your voice becomes less loud, but it can still be a beautiful song, really, if I want to use a metaphor.
Yeah, no, it goes. I've been asked this question before. I'm queen of marketing on a shoestring, and actually, I don't like to kind of admit it, in front of my CEO or at the time. But it's a little bit like, the analogy I used was maybe at the end of the month when you haven't done that big shop, and your food cupboards are looking like a little bit bare. And you're pulling together something to have for dinner, and you're pulling all of these random ingredients out of the cupboard and just putting them all together. And more often than not, what you have is this really, really beautiful meal that you've created that just tastes amazing. You never would have put these random things together. And that's how I feel about kind of marketing on a smaller budget, is that we have to be so resourceful with all of these free tools that you mentioned and things. But often something that we pull together, is just incredible for kind of what we spent on it. But you're absolutely right. I think then maybe this is where that experiment kind of 10% comes in handy, because if you've done this thing and used 10%, like you said, of your brain power into this kind of little experiment, and it's cost you very little, then actually you can put some budget towards that if you've got that extra 10%, and to amplify it a little bit more and see whether it brings you more results. I love that. One of the things that comes actually with a scaling company is a kind of a little bit of culture change within the team, and obviously within the wider company as well. What role can marketing play, do you think, in helping to support keeping that kind of that brand message and the story and everything alive internally within the company?
I think the culture and generally internal sort of communications it has two facets, right? So internal and external. And I think we often sort of serve the objectives of the commercial functions, our chief revenue officers and so on and so forth. But ultimately, our audience is our own employees as well as our future and potential employees. So again, this is why that integrity of the marketing campaigns and communication would be so important to me. Because if you believe, we have to believe in what we're saying, because that's what makes us proud and makes our colleagues so proud. And that's what also attracts the people in the environment in our sort of communities, really, to come and join us in that mission, on that really difficult mission sometimes. So I think from my perspective, that's where perhaps it's, it's not just a marketing job, but another example or another kind of question that I'm being asked sometimes. As you become a CMO, once you join that leadership team and that kind of executive level, your role becomes less about your kind of functional competence. The second and really important, or maybe even more important aspect of your role is providing that clarity of vision, internal communications, making sure that you continue to motivate people. You give them context, really, of why are certain things happening, why is the company moving, where are we going, actually. So it's less, I think this is perhaps the function that is probably the least discussed. But I think somehow this is the intangible part of the growth architecture in a way, or growth, maybe, I don't know, recipe, really. So as you were talking about your recipe kind of metaphor, I think that internal clarity on why and what are we trying to achieve ultimately drives almost as much success as all of your paid tools and, I don't know, playbooks and frameworks and channels and campaigns. It's the people, really, ultimately, that are responsible for all of that.
And that's the culture. That's the makeup of the culture, isn't it? That's where it comes from. I love that. That's great. Thank you. We're just coming up to time now, but I have a little tradition on the podcast where at the end, I've asked my network if they had a marketing leader standing in front of them now and they could ask them one question, what would that question be? and they don't know who the marketing leader is. So I have a question for you, and it's the question is, what is there an example in the past that you've had where you have had to kind of completely change your mind on something? You've really kind of stuck to your guns and you've believed it, and then you've had to kind of change your mind. Like, how did you handle that?
Uh, it's a hard one. But I think again, like if since we're on the track of the growth, I think we're probably all followed into the same, maybe fall into the same trap of at some stage actually following growth at all cost. And I think the thing that I've not changed my mind, but really now believe in that aspect of the growth is that indeed growth is not a panacea. We have to prioritize, whether it's B2C or B2B, we have to prioritize the lifetime experience of the consumers and customers. Ultimately, if you get customers in, but then they get disappointed, they feel like they've been tricked into something that they didn't buy really, that doesn't meet their expectations. This is bad growth. This is not what we should be looking for. So whether you're a marketeer, a growth, manager or hacker, whatever you call them, creating value really is what matters the most. And creating value comes from a lot of different dimensions, but you have to, and that is something that AI cannot really solve for us. So as much as we can optimize and look for shortcuts, ultimately we're responsible, and we have to make sure that we continue remembering about that responsibilities to the end users that we are serving and the customers that we're serving.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. My example actually is AI based, but it is kind of back in the day. In general, actually, I was very much against using AI for things like kind of like content production and things. But actually, over the years, I've grown to love it a little bit. But I use it more as a kind of a support tool. So not as kind of generating content and then publishing it as it is, but really just to kind of help me to almost be like a bit of an ear or a best friend that you can bounce ideas off of, and help to support. So that's my change.
AI is a phenomenal tool, and I know what you're talking about, especially in content creation. It can really feel sort of superficial, and perhaps, you can kind of feel the difference when it's being used, and you feel like it's a bit of a hack or a trick or like a little bit fake. But I actually can't stop. Also, I think what we should, if there was one piece of advice that I were to give to potentially a young marketeer or to my daughter who's 18 now, is at this stage, so broad piece of advice is to keep learning and to keep embracing whatever new technology that comes be your way, especially if it's a big driver of change. More specifically and more time bound really is learning how to use AI, coming back to the marketing on the shoestring, what do you do? Become an augmented marketeer. Learn to become, and this is a new profession that I've learned last week actually. I heard about it from an agency. Become a creative technologist. Mm-hmm. So creative technologist is a person who is able to apply creativity, but also would know which tool to use. So if you set aside a full day and go and experiment with 20 or 30 different use cases of AI beyond ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is just one of those aspects, but there are so many different ways. You learn how to do design, learn how to edit videos. I'm sure you are using a little bit of AI in editing your videos. Yeah. Write an ebook, do a research, test how it can work on your email marketing campaigns, test AI SDRs, learn, how to analyze CRM, learn how to use or try to see if AI can be used in product marketing, in media or campaign management, identify or find the difference between generative AI, agentic AI, I don't know, whatever, predictive AI. I think there's quite a few different types as well. So get not intimate, but also as you play with all of those tools, get to learn what works and what doesn't, and make tons of notes, and then come back the next day and you'll already be a different person and a much better marketer, I'm sure, as well. So I think that would be probably, that's how, again, like this is part of our responsibility really, but
Yeah.
also the fun in it as well. How do we become a 10x, like a Lucy on steroids, a Lucy times 10 really, times 100 maybe, with all of the tools. So yeah.
I love that. I've the feeling, the trick that I have for that actually is it's the learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So like every time that I see some of these things, and the first thing is that feeling in your gut of like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to edit videos, I don't know how to do a podcast, or just kind of feel a little bit more comfortable. But the trick that I have is that uncomfortable sick feeling that you've got is not uncomfortable, it's actually excitement. It's excitement for what you're about to learn. So if you think about it that way, and just go and experiment a little, and I think that's great. I think between us, hopefully we've encouraged some people out there to go and experiment a little bit with some of these new tools. But thank you so much. I could carry on talking to you for hours. I love it. I really appreciate you spending the time with me today. Thank you to the audience as well for listening.
Thank you for having me, Lucy.
Thanks.